I declare bankruptcy!
What makes a performance funny? It's a hard thing to put your finger on. Even when you describe a joke or a funny scene to someone, it never quite feels the same. Comedy is personal, and laughter is involuntary. So for the most part, you just know it when you see it. In 2005, Steve Carell wasn't particularly on my radar. I knew him as the guy from The 40-Year-Old Virgin and that one scene from Bruce Almighty. Little did I know that at the age of 43, he was about to begin what would become one of the finest comedy performances of all time as Michael Scott in The Office. When I heard they were remaking The Office in America, I had pretty low expectations. Just trying to recycle what Ricky Gervais accomplished as David Brent would be a fool's errand, and given the difference between British and American comedy stylings, it seemed like a potential mismatch. And for the first season of the US Office, that's exactly what it felt like. I could see why they cast Steve, as he has an earthy charm to him that resonates with almost any audience, but the humour was so dry that it didn't really cater to his strengths. The character was pathetic, hovering around the office, behaving like a poor man's Jim Carrey. But there was a warmth missing. He seemed somewhat sleazy and emotionally closed off. But it was in season 2 that the writers started to make Michael more innocent, someone with the temperament of a child, and this decision transformed the series into something unique. It was no longer trying to directly emulate a pessimistic British series. It was creating something fresh and more in line with American sensibilities. Michael Scott was now, at his heart, an optimist. And although the writers deserve massive credit for the series, Steve Carell brings certain intangibles to the table that really shine over the course of the show, or at least through seasons 2 to 7. In my opinion, there are 5 keys that make this performance not just hilarious, but impressive. The emotional transparency of the character, playing to multiple audiences at the same time, visibly thinking while he's feeling, playing it straight, and the dramatic heart behind the gags. Let's start with emotional transparency. Part of what's so likable about Michael Scott is that you always know what he's feeling. There's no mystery to him, as he can't help but share every detail of what he's thinking and feeling, as he wants to be liked so much that he automatically treats everyone as his friend. Like this scene here, Michael has just kissed his boss Jan and should keep it a secret. He starts off by suggesting he's not going to kiss and tell, but this smile just keeps bursting onto his face. He's so excited that he doesn't even need to confess for us to know what happened, almost like a child who just experienced their first kiss. He says it's off limits, but after a mere 3 seconds of silence, launches straight into the truth.
Fine, I took her back to her hotel and we made out for a little while. That was great.
This may seem like a small thing, but having a window directly into what a character is feeling makes them more trustworthy, as you know that even if he wanted to, he couldn't keep a secret.
Oh, I'm really worried I'm gonna say it.
No, Michael.
No.
Steve Carell creates a sense of childlike wonder in his eyes with almost everything he says. If he's happy, he can't contain it. The smile is just, by default, on his face. There's no lie in Michael. Some of the funniest material comes from this transparency, like how much he dislikes Toby.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
But it's not just funny because here he's yelling in his face. It's the way he sits. His body language is so repelled and closed off that if you took a still photograph, you would still know exactly what's going on. He plays Michael as someone who wears his heart on his sleeve. When he's sad or anxious, then it consumes his expressions. Like when he hears his former boss, Ed, died in an accident, and starts projecting his fears of dying alone onto the death of a bird, and the whole office hosts a bird funeral to make him feel better. Being this emotionally transparent makes the audience connect with the character more, as they intuitively trust him and want to nurture his naked vulnerability. Next is playing to multiple audiences at the same time. Part of this is just the nature of any mockumentary, that the characters aren't just living their lives, they're also aware that they're being filmed, so they frequently glance to camera. However, Michael Scott is such a showman that there are multiple layers to every scene. He isn't just trying to entertain the people in the room so they'll like him, he's also trying to make the audience at home, behind the camera, like him too. This is a man who needs validation and feeds off a crowd, so he always tries to hog the attention by putting himself on stage. But it's the rawness Carell brings to the table that makes the character feel real. Part of this is just Steve's face, like here as he's dancing. Notice how his body is getting more and more into the embarrassing dance with each movement, and his face is really feeling it as he discovers each move in real time, as if he's amazed at his own ability, while simultaneously looking around with his eyes for other people's approval, as their validation is what really motivates him. In any scene, an actor has to ask, "What's my motivation?" to know how to play it, what to hide, and what to reveal. But for Steve, when he's playing Michael, no matter what the primary motivation is, there's always a secondary motivation, make people like you, competing against it. But because he has an audience both in the room and outside the room, he's playing to multiple audiences at the same time. This leads directly into the next key, visibly thinking while he's feeling. Steve doesn't just make Michael's emotions fully transparent, he also shows us that he's thinking. There's something very basic and pure about Michael. There may be few subtleties to understanding him, but playing him involves many. Notice how, while he's talking, Carell shows us he's concentrating hard on trying to find the right word, as if there's a layer of stupidity fog he has to peer through to get the answer. This scene highlights both playing to multiple audiences and thinking as the character's feeling. Jan asks Michael if he always tells the whole office to go home when he leaves for a meeting. In this moment, Michael wants three things: Jan to approve of his leadership, the office to like him, and the audience at home to think he's cool. Essentially seeking three different audiences' validation at the same time. And that motivation filters through to Carell's performance. He starts off like a bold schoolchild, looking to the camera as if he's been caught misbehaving. After that, he tries to brag that they don't get much done when he's not here. Once he realizes that sounds worse, he feels vulnerable, and Steve shows us his thinking process with these little glances away. Then he tries to just focus on pleasing Jan, so he looks directly at her, but when he makes a mistake, he looks to the camera for approval, as he tries to think. So all of these competing motivations fluster his thought process. He then turns around and gives a speech that sounds authoritative, but he keeps undermining it with these vocal inflections to seem fun and cool.
Hey everybody, listen up! This is what we're gonna do!
Because of this aspect of the show and the character, there's always so much going on for Michael in each scene. He's in a constant state of reactivity, always improvising. Later, when Jan calls Michael to accuse him of getting her drunk, we see the direct inverse of the earlier scene when he was joyfully bragging about their kiss, and now his relationship with the audience changes. Here's how Steve plays it. First, he swallows a lump in his throat. Then notice how he won't look directly at the camera anymore. He vaguely looks in the direction, but won't make eye contact. It's subtle, but these little decisions make a big difference to how we experience the scene. He's trying not to engage with us because he's feeling social pressure and shame. So he looks away as he gets serious with Jan, then quickly glances up at the camera and flashes a big fake smile, as if he can reassure us that all is fine, but only for a flash half second. You barely even register it, because immediately afterwards, he starts physically hiding under the table. He could have just sat there and looked embarrassed, and then crawled under the table, but Carell adds all of these little details to enrich the experience for the viewer. The fourth key is playing it straight, and with this, Steve Carell is simply a genius. There's no other word for it. The writers set up some of the funniest lines possible, and Steve has to deliver them with an almost deadpan level of sincerity. The joke is simple. He's saying something silly and doesn't realize how silly it sounds, but it's how genuine Carell comes across that earns the laugh.
Does he even have a girlfriend? Because I have two, basically. If I can get them depressed, then I'll have done my job.
Then suddenly she's not your hoe, no mo.
There's an obliviousness in his expressions that no one else can quite capture. In moments like this, we get to see a combination of all of Carell's skills: emotional transparency, thinking while he's feeling, and playing it straight, as clearly Phyllis is crying and upset. But Michael needs to hear good news so badly that no matter how obvious the answer is, he insists on asking the question.
Did you or did you not get Sue grafted?
An important principle of comedy is contrast. If everyone is silly, then no one is silly. But if we have one character playing normal and the other one playing silly, then this acts as a counterweight, as the silliness only lands when the audience has someone in the room they can relate to. It's usually Jim or Pam, but in this moment it's everyone in the scene except Michael, making it even funnier. The more normal people there are to witness it, then the sillier he looks. But playing it straight doesn't always mean deadpan. It just means keeping it authentic to the character. An important part of Michael Scott is that he's an optimist, so much so that he's naive. He's filled with hope in every moment, hope that he can get a laugh or make a friend or secure a sale. My favourite scene is when Michael is trying to train Dwight how to treat a customer by running a fake phone call with Jim as a fictional client. Everyone in this scene is fantastic, but when Jim tells Michael he wants to buy $1 million worth of paper from him, just look at Steve's expression.
See how it's done?
Filled with such unbridled joy. And then when Jim says he can only have it if he fires Dwight, Carell takes it so seriously. You can see the emotional weight of the decision washing over him. The very idea of making a sale that big is so captivating to him that he's forgotten it's an imaginary phone call. And Steve not only plays it straight, but shows us Michael thinking while he's feeling. The final key is the dramatic heart behind the gags. As much as Michael is the fool of the show, he's also the glue that holds it all together. There are little moments where, even without realizing it, he's exactly who the characters need in their life to pick them up when they fall.
That's just who you are.
Like on the booze cruise when Jim watches Pam get engaged again, and he confesses to Michael that he's always had a thing for Pam. And Michael, who has been trying and failing to give motivational speeches all night, tells Jim to never ever ever give up.
Never, ever, ever give up.
Now on the face of it, it's blind optimism and not particularly good advice, but it's what Jim needs to hear, and Carell's earthiness makes it somehow feel like wise fatherly advice. For a brief moment, Michael isn't the clown, he's the boss. Or at Pam's art exhibition when no one else from the office shows up to support her, and then finally Michael arrives, having spent the day being told by business students that the paper industry is becoming obsolete. Michael's pride and defensiveness of the job he loves so much is still coursing through his veins, so when he sees Pam's drawing of the office, his mind is blown. He's not just supportive, but optimistic about her abilities and tells her he's proud of her.
I'm really proud of you.
Giving her the validation she needs. The same pure optimism that gets a laugh in other scenes now provides heartwarming support in this scene, which only works if we believe in the performance. These scenes are special because aside from being beautifully written and emotionally engaging, they're also still filled with comedy, like Michael having a chocolate bar in his pocket, which he plays off with a deadpan stare, or Michael somehow seeming as if Jim having feelings for Pam went over his head, when to everyone else, it's so obvious. Few actors could pull off a scene like this as cleanly as Carell does, maybe Robin Williams, which is saying a lot. But that's why, after Michael's emotional departure from the series, the producers flirted with lots of different possibilities to replace him, but none of them could match the unique energy that Carell brought to the show. Unlike Ricky Gervais' David Brent, who made you cringe with embarrassment and pity him, Steve Carell's Michael Scott made you root for him. Because as naive and foolish as he was, his childlike sense of wonder and emotional transparency triggers the audience's nurturing side. As we know that deep down, he wants the best for others, and therefore we want the best for him too. If you enjoy content like this and want to see more of it, please do consider supporting me on Patreon, as it really does make a difference to how much content I can pump out. Or if you can't afford that, then simply like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment down below to help the algorithm do its thing.